Kia ora everybody, my name is Shannon and thank you for that lovely introduction, Amanda. I've grown up here in Ototahi. It's my home, born and bred. Anyone else here, born and bred, Christchurch? Is that no one? Oh, wait, I see one hand, two hands. Oh, okay, all right, I'm not alone. But yeah, we're outnumbered. So I'm really pleased to be here speaking with you all today about what I believe is a really important topic, really for any professional that's doing work with young people today. Particularly for those that are in a counselling and guidance role. As Amanda shared, I wear a few different hats at the moment. I'm mum to an absolutely delightful 4-year-old. He really is amazing. Isn't he, Amanda? Can you attest to that? And I'm also a student. I'm that close to finishing my degree, and it's been a rough 4 years. I do not recommend it. And also I work at the UC Careers Te Rapura. So I'm not actually here today speaking as a UC representative. I'm here because this topic is really a culmination of all of my work experience and my life experience. So it's something that I really feel I can speak to from a professional and a personal perspective. So my own experience with mental health as a young person had a really profound impact on my career. So it really disrupted my original plans to head straight from school to university. But I was really lucky that when I had finished at high school, I had a family member who just happened to say to me, hey, I think maybe you'd enjoy youth work. And I thought, well, it's something. So I kind of fell into youth work and I studied at ARA, went on to spend many years in the industry in youth work and in community development before moving on to mental health support work later in my career. And studying career counselling rather late on in the piece because I found that it was a really ongoing concern for many of my clients, both in youth work and in mental health. So thank you guys very much for coming today, and the fact that you guys have given up your time to come and speak about this issue is, it's nice to see. It's nice to know that you guys care about the young people's wellbeing today. So hopefully our dialogue today really encourages ongoing conversations in this space, and it's something that you take away and talk to your colleagues about and discuss further and look at practical ways you can implement mental health support into your practice. So before we get started, I just want to do a bit of disclaimer and recognise that actually everybody here is going to have had some sort of experience with mental health. So if it's not firsthand, then maybe it's a friend, a family member, students, clients. And if any of our discussion is triggering today, then feel free to leave the room. Just manage it how you need. If you need to talk to someone or make some notes to debrief with your supervisor later on, go for it. So, getting on with our presentation. I think I've introduced myself, we can skip past that. Why are we having this discussion today? So, I could sum this up really simply and say, because it's a problem. Mental health for the 800,000 young people living in Aotearoa today is a big issue. In 2020, UNICEF rated our children last out of 38 rich countries for mental well-being. Our suicide rate for 15 to 19-year-olds for the year June 2020 was 18.69, higher than previous years' counts, and we continue to lead the developed world in incidences of youth suicide. Around 1/3 of the people in Aotearoa have a personal experience of mental distress, and this rate increases when we are discussing members of the rainbow community or Māori or young adults. In 2018, a government inquiry reported increasing numbers of children and young people showing signs of mental distress and intentional self-harm, and that's still on the rise. So this is made worse by inequity that's within socio-economic status that young people are born into, and this is leading to some really concerning mental health trends. miserable way to get started, but I'm not going to just leave it there. So, as a practitioner who does career development intervention, you will influence mental health and you cannot avoid doing so. So it's a pretty bold statement, and I really recommend that if you've got your phones, take a photo of this slide and look up this resource. It's available online, and it's just a really great manual that gets into some nitty-gritty around mental health if you are a career advisor. It's general, it's not specific to youth, but it's worth a read. So, sum it up. If you're working with young people, some of your clients are going to have mental health challenges, experiences, or diagnosis. You can't get around it. Whether you know or not, this is going to be your clients' experiences. So the last decade has seen the rise of a global mental health movement, and this implicates institutions, organisations, schools, managers, employees, and parents in recognising, supporting, and intervening with mental health. So mental health is now everybody's business. Being cognizant and intentional about your work with young people and incorporating mental health into that is just going to help you set them up for success in their career development. And at the end of the day, as career advisors, we hope to inspire a positive belief that everyone is capable of claiming and recovering a satisfying, hopeful, contributing life, even when mental health problems and illnesses may cause ongoing limitations. So because it's a workshop, I want to get you guys talking. And now we're moving on to getting a little bit more hopeful. And I really want you guys to think about a client or a student that you've worked with whose life was really significantly and positively altered by career development work that they did with you. And I want to hear about some of the changes that you witnessed. So if you could talk with someone around you and just think about some ideas. Just to get you started, I'm not talking about some really deep, meaningful work that you did with someone who had some severe mental health issues. We're not getting too technical, but I just mean mental health in general. So, for example, when students come to you and they're really stressed about, they don't know what they're going to do after high school, it just seems awful, all their friends seem to figure it out, and they just don't know what they're doing. And after the session, you see them, they leave, and they're a bit more hopeful, they've got a bit of a plan. They're in a different place from when they started. So if you've got any moments like that, if you could just spend some time sharing with the person next to you. So great to see people chatting. Cool. Thanks for that, guys. Can I have some people jump up and share their story? There are microphones around, so you can just stand up, or share their partner's story, whoever they were chatting with. Just give me some examples of how you've seen career advising help young people. This is a big room of people. How about the people from Christchurch? You guys want to stand up? Oh, we've got a volunteer, great.
I live on the west coast of the South Island in a very rural area, and our students, when they have to, our high achievers, when they're thinking about going to university, we have quite a long talk about where they would go and how they can finance it and everything like that. Now this year I had an absolutely wonderful, well, all my students are wonderful, but an absolutely wonderful year 13 student who came into my office crying. She wasn't quite sure whether she would actually reach the requirements to actually go to Auckland University to do the degree that her parents wanted her to do. And that was another thing, is she wasn't really sure whether that's actually what she wanted to do. And so we had a big discussion about that. And then it was a discussion about how she would actually bring it up with her parents, because she didn't want to disappoint her parents. Oops, sorry. I told you I wasn't used to microphones. And living in a small community can be very helpful, in that I actually knew her parents in another role, and we just had a kororo about that. And so then she was able to go home and have that conversation with her parents that that wasn't what she wanted to do. And then she came back to my office and she was so much better. But I have a lot of that with my high achieving students. They think they can't do it, and it's because we don't give them the opportunity to sort of like go and have a look at those universities and everything like that, because we just live too far away from them. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a beautiful example. Right, there's someone else game up the back.
Oh, I've got one. Just a very small one from the Te Kura, the correspondence school. But in a very small rural town, I meet up with the students, and one student couldn't come into our meetups by herself, so she comes in with her sister, very shy, very anxious, has horse therapy, lots of different therapies going on. And she was really sort of struggling, but she said she loves books. So I said, well, would you volunteer at the local, very small country sort of library? And she said she would. So I dived up to see the manager, and fortunately the manager said, yes, we welcome people, students in to come and work here a couple of hours a week. And it's all come through, and the student texted me the other day saying, hey, I'm going along and helping out at the library. And so it's just a small little story, but hopefully it will really grow into something very positive and maybe a pathway forward for her in her future careers. Yeah.
I love it, thank you. Right, one more. Yes, yep.
Hello, I'm Linda Cousy from Potato College, and we are relatively rural, even though we're sort of like on the main highway. It's hard for us to access a lot of tertiary stuff, but we have a lot of students with mental health issues, and I'm not sure that it's in the students' best interest to adapt their timetables drastically to make life easier for them, when it is going to deny them the opportunity to follow that dream that they have of being, in this instance, a girl wanted to be a nurse, but when I looked at her timetable, there was nothing in there that was going to take her down a pathway to be a nurse, and she was becoming very naughty at school because nothing was taking her along that pathway. A conversation around alternative pathways and bridging courses was life-changing, and a phone call to her mother was met with a lot of relief because they didn't know. So I think it's just that extra layer that we can often provide that actually is life-changing. Thank you.
Nice, great. We don't have anyone else who's really eager to share, do we? Didn't miss any hands. Just want to check I'm not moving on. No? Okay, great. So where does career education sit in the mental health movement? So first of all, from all the stories that everyone here just shared, we know that we're already doing the work. Career professionals know and recognise that career development contributes to well-being. We see it every day. We're already doing the work, there's just no framework around it. So at this stage, but the evidence for career education as a mental health intervention is anecdotal, not necessarily because the evidence doesn't exist, just because the research hasn't really been done yet. The positive thing is that it's actually happening as we speak. And so there's a growing body of evidence that demonstrates that career education has a positive impact, effective career education has a positive impact on young people's wellbeing and mental health. And there are career professionals abroad that are really putting in the mahi to put some framework and processes around this, that we've got something to work on going forward. So this is a watch this space topic for career advisors and for our professional development. But actually, how could career advice not be a protective factor when it comes to mental health? I mean, it just leads to so many outcomes, such as giving young people hope, giving them confidence, self-efficacy, their resilience, and connection to their present and to their future. All things that are really, really protective factors when it comes to a young person's mental health. So again, mental health is mental health intervention, not mental illness intervention. So it's really important that we do make that distinction when we're having this discussion, because it really recognises the limitations and the parameters of our roles as career educators. So we're not equipped to treat mental illness, it's just really outside our scope of practice. And even if maybe we do have some psychologists or psychiatrists in here today, but when you're working as a career advisor, it's still outside your scope. It's not what you're resourced to do, it's not what you're there to do. So mental health versus mental illness, what's the difference? So enter Key's dual continuum model. Now this model I really enjoy. I mean, it looks super boring when it's up like that. I'm sure you can make it prettier. But the idea of this model is that it challenges the automatic assumption, or I guess the biases that come with mental health. So it really considers mental health and mental illness as two states of being at alternate ends of a single continuum. So when we think about someone with a mental illness, you think of them as very different to someone who's really thriving in their life. So you're either mentally well, or you're not, or maybe you're somewhere in between. But if you look at the definitions of the two states, the distinctions between mental illness and mental health start to become apparent. So mental illness provides that it's something that is diagnosable. It's characterised by alterations to mood, behaviour, difficulties in relationships with others. It impairs a person's ability to function, and it's associated with significant distress. Now, mental health, the definition of that is that it's a state of well-being in which every individual realises his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So Key's model effectively separates health and illness by putting them on two different continuums. Not to say that the two don't relate, or that they don't interrelate or affect each other, but to demonstrate that mental health is not the absence of mental illness. So that's a really key distinction for us as career developers to make. So what would that idea look like in the real world? So I have a bit of a story that's based on a young person that I used to work with, and I'm going to call them Jade. So Jade was in the last couple of years of their high school, and by all accounts had been absolutely nailing it. Jade was in the student leadership team, had excellent grades, musically gifted, and generally considered a bit of a poster child by the school that they were at. But Jade also had been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive personality disorder, something that had experiences of, well, symptoms for their whole life. And actually something that the school hadn't been made aware of. So in fact, the school only became aware when symptoms became really bad for Jade and they started to have more and more time off school and needed periods of hospitalisation. So when you look at that model, you can see how, just from that short story, Jade would have moved around different windows within Key's dual continua. At some points, Jade was absolutely flourishing outwardly and really successful in it, able to contribute really meaningfully to things that were important in their life. And at other points, Jade was really languishing or floundering and unable to, achieve in the way that they felt that they could. And when you look at a young person that's having an experience like that, it really changes how you work with them. You're not going to, give up on them and think that actually their illness is going to prevent them from doing some really meaningful career work with them. You're just going to change your approach and say, hey, you told me that you want to be the next Prime Minister of New Zealand. You're really successful, you're a really high achiever, you put in the work. Like, this is a reasonable goal for you. How are you going to manage that? And your mental health. So these are the kind of ways that discussions start to be shaped when you bring a mental health approach to it. So now I just want to spend another couple of minutes talking amongst yourself. Feel free to share however much you do or don't want to. Thinking about different times in your career or your life when you would have been in different windows or sections of this model. So if you want to share with your neighbour, then please do. If you don't, then understand. All right, let's come back to it. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask anyone to share. I feel like this is a bit personal to share in front of a large group. But you can start to see how that could be used as a really effective professional development tool. If you're sitting down and looking at different times in your life when you were in different periods of this model and thinking about what got you through it, what were the tools that you used to move yourself around, perhaps how did you experience mental illness and still manage to flourish or to achieve what you wanted. Really sitting down and doing that work and identifying some of those things that were present for you in those different times is going to help you to either continue practices that keep you in a really well, healthy space, or identify things that help get you out of a space. Or, realistically, if you're in one of the floundering, languishing spaces, how are you going to put systems in your life to keep things ticking along till you can re-engage in a meaningful way for yourself? So it's just about being proactive with your mental health and your mental illness, whether or not you do or don't have one. So moving along, how can I incorporate mental health into my practice? So I think this is probably the bit that most of you came here today to talk about. And I'm going to take it right back to the basics and talk about Super's lifespan, life space theory. I know many of you would have heard about that. Let's get a show of hands. Who's heard about Super? Yeah. More hands up for that than there were for people living in Christchurch, but never mind. I would have thought it'd be more obscure. So one of Super's greatest contributions to career development was his emphasis on the importance of developing a self-concept, and that the self-concept changes over time depending on your experiences and life goals. So before Super's career development theory was mainly seen as a singular choice, one job for life, and Super viewed career development as a lifelong theory, a lifelong activity, so really coming in and challenging that singular job theory. So additionally, he identified different areas or life spaces that help make a person who they are. So parent, homemaker, worker, citizen, leisureite, I don't know what that is, but I want that to be me. Student and child. So all of these roles imply connection with other people in different ways. And it really implies that other people are key in shaping who we are. So when we look at these definition of career development, we see Super loud and clear. Career development is the process of managing life, learning, work over the lifespan. Career development is the lifelong process of managing learning, work, leisure, and transitions in order to move toward a personally determined and evolving preferred future. So the key point there is that there are many different spaces that the young people you work with are going to be occupying in their personal life and in their education. So they're not, when you're planning with them, why would you just be looking at what they're going to do for future work? So all of these contribute to the rainbow that really makes up a person's life. People are a sum of their experiences and their relationships to others. Can anyone think of any Aotearoa health models that sort of bring in or align, expand on Super's theory? Anyone? What was that, sorry? Yeah, yep. Haiora model, te whare tapawha, the idea that a person's health is dependent on them being strong in several different areas of their life. They're not one individual. So that's a really nice way to sort of frame up some of Super's ideas and bring them into a Aotearoa relevant context. So next point, work collaboratively. And this is about really recognising that we're not working in a silo. And young people aren't living in a silo. Their career development, their career goals, their future education, it's not the only thing going on for them. Who else is involved in their life? Can you bring them along to some of the career development sessions? How can you involve them in the process of your students' decision makings? Who is your student having career conversations with outside of your office? Who else are they talking to about this? What else is going on for them? Is anything getting in the way of their career goals? Do they need a referral elsewhere? Do we know who we're going to refer them on to? Do we have a list of resources that we can support them with? So a wide network of support is really protective for a young person. So if they have a network of individuals who are all helping them in an effective way, then that's going to really support them. One, if they are experiencing mental illness and having periods of distress, then the more people that are talking, the more eyes on them, the safer it is for them. And the more people that are working together and collaborating for the interests of this young person, the more likely they are to succeed and be able to achieve things. So thirdly, adopt a non-linear approach to career planning. So again, recognising that there are lots of different external forces that are impacting your student, that are making up their life, that they're not just their career focus. Take a non-linear approach. So go beyond the obvious. If your student says, I want to be a lawyer, and you say, cool, here are some places you can study law. Or you've done a test with them and it says they're interested in these kind of careers, and you just, you're giving them, this is how you can do it. You can study these things at high school, that's going to really support you to study this at university, and then you need to sign up to this professional body, and you're away laughing, there's your career. It's a very linear approach, and that's not necessarily wrong. For some young people, that's a really effective way to achieve their career goals. But if that young person was to experience a mental health crisis or something that really disrupts their plans, are they prepared, or is their career plan resilient enough to pull them through it? Can you talk to young people about, hey, I know you've had some mental health struggles this year. How do you manage that? What's that going to look like when you go to university? Are you going to have enough time to take on a full-time study load and practice the self-care that you need? Do you need to incorporate time for more sleep? How are you going to get through the stressful exam periods? Actually helping them to put a plan in place is a good way to support them, and looking at alternative ways into careers. Hey, you want to be a lawyer, but you're recovering from some pretty extreme time in hospital with your mental health. Is it the right time for you to be going to university? Here's some other ways that you could get into it. Maybe you would want to work as a legal professional in an office supporting lawyers for a few years. Maybe you just want to study on the side, do a paper here and there. There are many ways to get into different careers, and it doesn't need to be a straightforward, obvious path. And you're not necessarily pushing your views of how you feel a young person should engage in their career process, but you're just saying that actually this doesn't need to be the straightforward, traditional path. You're giving them options. Focus on resiliency, self-efficacy, purpose, and belonging. So, we do that already when we do our values and our strengths and skill-finding exercises. They go a long way to helping a young person build their confidence and really, build their sense of self. And again, these are protective factors that are going to get them through the hard times. If they know they're really good at one thing, how can they use that skill to compensate for areas in their life that they're struggling with? And I think this is really important, consider equity in your practice. So following on from Sasha McMeeking's talk earlier in the conference, equity is really important. And if we want young people to be able to access opportunity, we need to think about the way that we're delivering our services. So the World Economic Forum states that we're in a moment of youth mental health crisis. Career aspirations for young people have remained stagnant since 2000. It's not true of all young people, because systemic issues like race, social class, economic background, gender, all contribute to making it harder for some young people to access opportunities. So in other words, economic opportunities are not created equal, and the ability to imagine career opportunities changes depending on the opportunities that are made available to you. So educate young people about the vast world of work and options available to them. Teach young people about trends so that young people know that the job market is something that changes and it evolves. So encourage their imagination and curiosity. So if they are looking to explore something, teach them to explore it. Show them how to explore their career options, even if in your mind you're thinking, it's so impractical. We've been there. I know we all have. Help young people solve their problems and offer them praise when they achieve something. And lastly, and really simply, just support their interests. Now, I want to spend some time, a bulk of time really, getting some ideas from you about how you can, take some of these ideas and incorporate them into your practice as you deliver it. Because it's going to be different for everybody here. We all work differently, we all have different resources available to us, different time available to us. So I want to get some ideas, really small, practical things, and if we can share them all at the end, we can get, hopefully, a few ideas coming in that people can go, oh, I didn't think of that, or yes, that would work well in the way I run things. So spend some time now talking amongst yourself. What's one practical thing that you can do to incorporate some of these mental health protective factors into your practice? Go for it. Another 30 seconds. It was a short 30 seconds. All right, who wants to share some ideas? Who wants to go first? What have we got? There's a big group of career educators in here. We should have some great ideas coming out. Yes.
Hi, I'm another person from Alternative Education in Christchurch. Just the nature of our organisation, a lot of this is stuff that we try and do anyway. But since coming to conference, we've been having some really good chats around the working collaboratively area. A lot of the problems we have are to do with actually getting the kids to turn up for stuff that we've organised, just the nature of our students. So we've been talking about working collaboratively more with whānau, getting them in so that they can see that even if there is a rocky path, there is still a path to a career, to a place to go. And we're talking about starting up a twice a year thing where with each of our providers, we get in a couple of parents, a couple of other people from the community, and get them just to talk about how their journeys looked and how it hasn't been linear, how it has had peaks and troughs, and do it in a way where they're seeing it from people they already recognise, they already know, they already have a connection or a relationship with.
Nice. I love it. I love it. That's great. Who's next? Oh. Great.
Tēnā tātou i te whare, ka zāna hau, he uri au ngō Ngāpuri me Waikato i te taho tōku pāpa no te mautere o Rarotonga. I'm based in Huntly in Waikato. Myself and my work colleague, we run Oho Mauri. So mental health is pretty embedded in rangatahi that we serve. They're predominantly Māori. They have come from sort of alternative spaces. So we work with I don't really refer it as mental health, I refer it to as challenging kaupapa. So the way in which I liaise with rangatahi is through changing the narrative, but it doesn't remove the fact that they've got some underlying issues. So given that Māori are part of those statistics, we look at mechanisms that better engage with rangatahi Māori. So we even use maramataka as a mechanism to understand how do we then respond to rangatahi when they're in our care. So today I think it's whiroarang. So we know that our kids are busy in Waikato, but there's often chickens. How do you understand? Knowing maramataka from a kaupapa Māori perspective, how do we then use mātauranga practices to better engage? How do we respond through those lenses at the same time? Increasing endorphins through holder, so our kids do kickboxing, they do swimming, they do strength and endurance. And they also do work fitness, which is about how do they carrying out an activity and where they can grind for long periods of time. So that's about building resilience. Cultural identity is really important, so they know who they are, where they come from, and feeling a sense of purpose and self-confidence transitioning. There's also, we do pastoral care for 3 years post they finish our program. We track them and we also reintegrate them back into different spaces. So we know where all our kids are over the tenure that they've been with us. Providing them with opportunities where they feel a sense of exposure, because a lot of our rangatahi don't have role models within their environments. So giving them opportunities to get a taste of the different types of job families or functions that are out there, and enabling them to feel a sense of purpose and achievement and contribution to their whānau. In addition to that, it's about weaving their whānau on their journey, because they go back to those environments. And then we look at ourselves as, so we're not educationalists, we're not practitioners, we've got backgrounds in trades. We're using a collaboration of mixed experience of staff that are an amazing team. So from trades, from engineering, from business, finance, a beautician which focuses on personal hygiene and presentation, and we also do our own training. So going back to doing Te Tiriti o Waitangi training, what does that look like? Why are our whānau where they are? So understanding the fabric of whakapapa. And then whilst we might be doing all this work and there's this focus on transitions, it's also about educating employers. So what are you doing to build cultural responsive practice in your organisation? And, you know, it's a case of don't be a dick. I'm not saying everyone's a dick in terms of employers, but actually be a coach, be a mentor. What does your culture, your organisational culture look like to ensure rangatahi feel a place of belonging if we're building a sense of belonging? So, tēnā tātou.
Thank you. That's great. And I think that is a real example of the kind of work that, or the approach that I know most career advisors would like to take to their work with young people. But what about some of the people in here who maybe a career advisor in schools and you're perhaps not resourced with time as well as you could? Is there anyone here in that position, working in schools that doesn't have a scope of job that allows them to take a really broad approach to their work? Yeah, up there. Did you come up with any ideas? Yep. Not to put you on the spot.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Robin from Nelson Girls. I unfortunately only have about 5 or 6 hours a week to do careers for our whole school, which is really challenging. I'm my own worst enemy because I love to teach in the classroom, and I teach accounting and I teach 3 senior classes. So it's kind of evolved over time that the situation has been created. It's very hard to do a lot of what has been said in such a short amount of time that I have. But I'm very fortunate. My father was a psychiatric nurse, so I draw on a lot of, I guess, gifts that he gave me growing up. I'll probably get upset because he died recently. But even very small things, like just listening to someone's story. I used to be the teacher that filled the gap and would speak a lot, and the student's voice wasn't heard. So very much now I think of what my dad would do, and he would sit back and he would let them speak. Little things like students will come in and their hands are shaking. They're really anxious, they're nervous about meeting me. They've probably never had me as a teacher. And when they're like that, they're often quite teary. So I just get up and I get a glass of water, go out to my kitchen that's next to the careers centre, and bring it back in, and it gives them time to regroup. And it's giving people space to be able to feel they're safe and that they can talk to you. Personally too, and my daughter would never mind me saying this, she suffers from depression, and having lived with someone with depression really helps you to understand about mental health issues, about mental illness. I think until you've actually experienced it firsthand personally, it's really difficult to understand. My father used to say that having depression, clinical depression, is like being in a black hole where you can't even begin to think about even lifting a finger to even get yourself out of it. I think my lucky stars, I've never felt like that in my life, but I've seen my daughter at that point, and it is really frightening. She's really well now, by the way. And it's only through giving people space to talk and getting some professional intervention, but just loving them and saying to them that, you know, this is the worst, Grace, that you'll, she won't mind me saying her name, this is the worst you're going to feel, darling. That's what Dad said to her. And things are going to get better, and the birds will sing again, and let's just work together as a whānau to actually help you. So this comes very much from my heart, everybody. So, yeah. Kia kaha.
Thank you. Cool. I think we've got time for one more idea. So I can quickly talk about some really practical ways that we try and do some of this work at UC Careers. We're lucky, we're a department that is, or a team that is solely focused on career advice for the university. So again, we get to work with employers and educate employers, and we get flexibility in how we deliver our services. However, at the end of the day, we only have 2 full-time career advisors to service an entire university. So we do have some pressure there. So some of the practical things that we do are making sure that we know and that we have available information about mental health services in our weight room and in our offices so that we can pass them on to young people if we know that they need extra support. But more than that, actually making calls, sending emails if we feel like someone's walking out of our room and we think, they're going to need a little something else. Secondly, when we have students come in, we know that the trend is around the middle of the year or towards the end of the year, those times of the year, we're going to have students that are coming in who have realised that engineering is not for me, or whatever is not for me, and suddenly their clear life plan is in ruins and they just don't know where they're going to go next. So we make sure that we have space available in those times or extra spaces, extra appointments, and having discussions between the team around those kind of students that are coming in, so we know that they're getting the support that they need when they're in a potentially vulnerable time of their lives. So there are 2 ideas, and again, you guys would have heard from Sasha McMeeking, so the entire university, and definitely us included, are, auditing ourselves against equity measures and working out where we can improve and be more culturally responsive, and ensure that we're not putting up unnecessary barriers in our practice that are stopping young people from accessing our services. So those kind of conversations are really helping. So I would love to continue this conversation, and I hope that you all do, and talk with your colleagues, talk with other people in your networks about how we can really intentionally start bringing awareness of mental health into our practice going forward while we wait for that framework to be set up by the people who are researching it currently. So thank you guys for listening today. One more slide with some great resources. Again, they're all international, they're not New Zealand specific, but they're also not completely left field or out of the realm of possibility, so they're really worth checking up. Again, it's that book that I mentioned earlier. A great approach to supers theory, and these quick little podcasts that give you a bit of an idea about where mental health and career advice is moving. Cool, thank you.